covering the High Plains with news, weather, and information. From TV 23 Studios in Sublette, this is High Plains Today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this special edition of High Plains Today. You know what? Since football season really in the state of Kansas gets fired up next weekend, we're going to bring you a new feature. My good friend Dr. Jack Jacob is here, and we are going to talk about football coming up starting next week, and we're going to start next week with a new series. He's going to go out, he's going to go out, and he's going to talk to coaches and players, and we're going to kind of preview a game of the week, and that'll be playing next Friday, right?
Right. Although technically, if you don't go, no one will shoot the footage.
Oh, no, I'll send Brian with you. I'll be there to hold your hand. I'll hold your hand.
That's always important.
Yeah. No, I will be there. He's going to do most of the talking.
I think it's a great opportunity to, kind of showcase some local area coaches as well as players, kind of talk to them in their environment about upcoming games. I think obviously throughout the season, it could mean more than weeks 1 and 2 in terms of especially as playoff pictures begin to formalize and that sort of thing. But again, an opportunity to get some exposure to some young men that, they're not in the big cities and they're not from the major nationally powerhoused schools. And so give them an opportunity to kind of get some exposure, and who knows where that could lead.
We're not? This isn't major cities?
Well, it is to us.
It is to us. Yeah, next week we're going to go down. We're going to talk to, we're going to feature Sublette and Southwestern Heights. So hopefully we're going to get with Matt Fox. He's the head coach at here in Sublette, and
Coach Skripczyk.
Coach Skripczyk. I know I can't say it. He is the head coach at Southwestern Heights. So we're going to get ready for that. We're going to go down and talk to them, catch a little practice, shoot a little B-roll, talk to some of the players. So that'll be a good time.
I think it will be. It's,
and you can look for something like it. And we're going to try and do that every Friday through the football season.
And, I've had the opportunity to cover both those coaches, both Matt Fox as an assistant under Coach Simpson, and then with Coach Skripczyk after he came over from Ashland. So it'd be a good opportunity to visit with them and kind of get a pulse of the season. And hopefully we'll catch them on Monday before they're in full bore terror mode. So
terror mode. Okay. All right. So now that we got that out of the way on kind of what we're going to do on Football Fridays, let's talk a little bit about, now there's been some realignment as far as the Kansas High School Activities Association. As 6A and 5A are going to be completely different this year, right?
Right. We've kind of gone to the, and people will probably get upset the way I describe it, we've kind of gone to the kindergarten, everybody gets a ribbon style of playoffs in Kansas for 6A and 5A. We take all 32 teams.
Everybody's getting a participation ribbon,
That's right? We take all 32 teams in 6A and 5A. They divide them east and west, so there's 16 teams on each side. And once you play your 8 regular season games, your 9th game becomes your first playoff game. So after 8 games, they'll seed 1 through 16 for east and west, and then they'll play their way up till they work to the championship. So some teams like, for instance, in 6A right now, Dodge City is right now preseason ranked like number 14. So that would be out of all 32. So they would get probably, they would be an upper half.
Seed,
yeah. And
6
so,
or 7 seed.
Garden City is ranked number 11, so they would be a little better. Liberal in 5A is ranked 24th right now at 32, so chances are they would play a higher seeded team. But what it really does is it eliminates your districts and just puts everybody in the pot.
And they're going to split it like they have in the past, east-west.
Right.
So that part of it won't change, but who you may play for your first playoff game is going to change, right?
Right.
Now, is this a one and done, single elimination, boom, out?
Yes.
Okay, so 8 games, you get to number 9, and it's win or go home.
And what it really creates is a situation, I think, where you kind of have incentive, and again, I don't want to put thoughts in coaches' minds, but I think there's incentive to blow some games out and to really run up some scores, because when it comes to seeding, let's say Liberal plays Great Bend and beats them 24-20. and somebody else plays Great Bend and beats them, 56-20. Well, when you go to seeding and they look at that head-to-head matchup, they're naturally going to go with the wider margin of victory.
So do you think the biggest reason that they did this in 5A, 6A is because, for a lot of years, you've got some teams around the state of Kansas that are in some really, really tough conferences. And you look at, like some of the City League teams in Wichita who are 5A now, say, you got Wichita Heights and Bishop Carroll and those types, but they're in the City League and they play a lot of games, but they're all playing each other. And so it could go any which way. And you could still get into district play if you had like a 2-7 record.
Right. And I think it's designed for parity, certainly. And you had that. You had both situations, actually. You had some teams that won their district because, let's say, the 3 teams in their district were 0-9, 1-9, and 2-8, 2-7, and so this team gets out of their district 3-6. The only games they've won are against basically winless teams, and they go out and get destroyed somewhere in the playoffs. Whereas somebody else who was, I think Garden City ran into this last year, where they got squeezed out of the playoffs.
Ooh, that's right, they did. Yeah.
So
last year, yes.
So you get into a situation like that where you can have one district with 4 what could potentially be top 10, top 15 teams. 2 of them stay home, and 2 of them get to go on. This way, all 4 of those teams could potentially advance to the playoffs.
All right, but you're still going to have one playing 16.
Right.
Potential for a blowout there.
And we kind of expected that over the years. If you watch the first round of playoffs in every classification, you get some really horrendous games.
That's true. You get into the second and third weeks, that's when you start, getting to the really good and close games.
Right.
So, and Meade is a good example of that. I mean, Meade, they would blow through their first couple of district games, and then once they moved on from there, then you're getting down to playing the Smith Centers and those teams, and it was a game.
Right.
And usually that team ended up being state champion.
And a lot of times you got to that game without being tested. So you're not really as ready for that game as you could be if you had the opportunity to schedule some other games because you weren't locked into a district.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about all this, though. So stick around. Dr. Jack and I will be back right after this.
You're watching High Plains Today on TV 23 with host Chris Jewell. TV 23's internet service and 4G live streaming provided by United Wireless. Coverage you deserve. Service you expect. United Wireless.
And welcome back. I am here with my good friend, Dr. Jack Jacob. We're talking about high school football. State of Kansas starts next week. And we're going to have a brand new show starting next week on Fridays. You can tune in. We're going to be previewing a game every week. Next week, we'll be previewing Sublette and Southwestern Heights, be talking with the coaches and some of the players. So make sure you watch that next Friday. In the meantime, though, we talked about kind of what 5A, 6A has done there. Everybody gets a participation ribbon. Not so much in 4, 1A, 4, 2A, 3, all the way down. That all pretty much stays the same.
Haven't they made this convoluted?
Yeah.
4A Division 1, 4A Division 2,
yes,
3A, and then 2-1A, which to me, I'm like, why don't you just go 4A and then make 4A2 be 3A, make 3A 2A, and make 2-1A all just 1A?
Because that would make too much sense.
Well, and it probably affects other sports.
And you can't tell the players without a program anymore, So, anyway, but those all, and 8-man and all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, and you got 8-man 1 and 8-man 2. So all that pretty much stays the same.
Right.
But there has been a little bit of realignment out here in western Kansas in 4A, right?
4A2.
4A2, not 4A1, 4A2.
Yeah, and just so that people kind of get that general feel, Ulysses is 4A1. They will open the year against Liberal, who's 5A. So you have the larger 4A versus the 5A, and then your 4A2, which was Holcomb, who's your defending state champs, and they actually and Hugoton, by the way, And then they will actually have a new challenge this year because Scott City, who lost last year to Phillipsburg in the 3A bracket. Phillipsburg went on to win the state championship in 3A, but they have bumped now to 4A Division II. And Max Preps has Scott City favored to win 4A Division II and have Holcomb slated as fourth right now, preseason.
So they don't have Holcomb repeating. Holcomb is ranked fourth in 4A2.
Right.
And Scott City, the new kid in town, is slated to win 4A2.
Correct.
And they're in the same conference, I think, right? In the Great Western Athletic Conference. Mm-hmm. So they play each other every year anyway.
Right.
But it didn't really have any playoff implications so much. Now it's a different story maybe for those two teams, right?
Right.
Because Scott City has been kind of a perennial power lately in 3A. And they were always in the playoffs, always going for the state title, it seemed like. And now with Holcomb getting their program all rebuilt and built up for the last few years, they've been pretty salty. And now you throw Scott City in on top of them.
Well, the thing that will be kind of the lifesaver there is that they're in different districts. So Scott City is more with Colby and Goodland and forget Oakley, I think. And then you have Holcomb still with Hugoton and some of the other down south teams. So technically, it does mean something when they play in this earlier in the season as part of the GWAC, but it won't potentially keep them out of the playoffs because 4A and down have not moved to the new playoff format that you have in 5 and 6A. So they'll still go. Your district winner will play a district runner-up from another district, so on and so forth.
But the thing is, though, they could meet for the chance. It could have implications on who's going to the state championship.
Yeah, and
that's going to be, so there could possibly be two really big games between Scott City and Holcomb a year now.
There could be. The other thing that it affects, too, is it's hard to beat somebody twice in the same year. So let's say, for argument purposes, Holcomb gets the better of Scott City earlier in the year. I don't necessarily say I'm going to see that happening, but let's just say that it does. Then when they play later in the playoffs, it's a little bit more of a pressure situation for Holcomb to repeat that victory versus Scott City, who they seem to just hit another gear in playoffs. And so that would become another of a challenge.
Well, who was it last year? Remember, we were talking, we were talking on I think you and I were talking on the weekend one time, and all of a sudden, remember, Hugoton was just trying to get through their season. Ulysses was rolling, and then all of a sudden, those two played their regular season game, and Hugoton ends up and beats Ulysses. And we both go, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's high school football.
That's high school football.
A wise person used to say to me, and I think he sits opposite me, that's why we play the game, because in high school football, when you're talking about young men that are athletes, emotion can play a huge role in games. You get a team that has been thirsty for some success, and now all of a sudden they experience a little bit of it, that can catapult them over the edge, and they can play lights out well above themselves.
Meade, all of a sudden, once they started rebuilding that program over there, and that coach, help me, you know him, the name, what's his name?
Mosier,
yeah. He got that program turned around, and they got a little taste of success and moving through the state playoffs, and all of a sudden, ba-bam, here a year or two ago, state champions, and they've been kind of playing for the state title here the last several years.
Well, and where I would take that same analogy is the year that same year, I believe, when Elkhart beat Meade, and so they had to play their way back through. So it's a situation where, in that situation, Elkhart got into that game, got some success early in the game, and really emotionally reacted to that by playing well beyond themselves. Yeah. And so that can happen. And the flip flop can happen. You can have a team that walks in and thinks we're just going to steamroll these guys, and they get punched early, and they go, oh, and then they're flat, and they end up losing the game. So that's why we play the game.
Yep, D-U-N done. Yeah, Herm Edwards always said, that's why we play the game. Yeah, all right. Stick around. The Good Doctor and I will be back with more on high school football right after this. And we're back. All right, I'm talking with my good friend Dr. Jack Jacob. We're previewing pretty much the high school football season here in Southwest Kansas. We may touch a little bit on Oklahoma as we go along, but we're not sure yet. Anyway, all right. So we hit on 5A. We hit on 6A. We hit on 5A. We've done 4A1, 4A2. All right, now we're going to move down. We're going to go into 3A. So some of the big highlights in the air in Southwest Kansas as far as 3A.
Well, probably the biggest news we covered in the last segment was the movement of Scott City from 3A to 4A2. You got Southwestern Heights, which many people forget that they're 3A. Coach Skripsik's done a pretty good job down there, coming from Ashland from a Class C program and moving over to Southwestern Heights. So they have had some success and they've had some challenges. We talked earlier about how emotional the game can be. And over the years that I've watched them, if you ever have an opportunity to watch Coach Skripsik, he is an intense coach.
Is he animated?
He is, but
Animated?
not
In a good way. In a good way.
Yeah, not in a destructive way. And his players really pick up on that.
Yeah.
They have really played well in some games that I thought maybe they wouldn't. But they've also at times kind of, I won't say let down, but kind of let down my expectation for whatever that's worth in some games that I thought they would be in. And so I think he really kind of has his hands full over there trying to get the Kismet Plains area fired up in football.
Well, they had a pretty fair season last year.
Yeah,
it wasn't
not too bad.
terrible.
Not too bad.
I mean, there's been some years past that Southwestern Heights has lacked a little bit on the football side.
Right.
So, okay. Who else we got in the area in 3A?
That's pretty much your
That's
major
pretty much
ones.
yeah, that's pretty much our big 3A.
Yeah.
Okay, so we drop down into 2A1?
2-1A.
2-1A as
2
opposed
and
to
1A.
Oh, 2 and 1A. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Right. Why don't we just make it 1A?
I think because it affects other sports. It probably affects basketball and maybe volleyball for the girls or something. But
I think I need to write a sternly worded letter to the Keisha and C.
good luck.
All right, yeah, that's that's a waste of pen. That's a waste of ink. Okay, so when we get into 2 and 1A, all right, so the first team I think of in that division is Meade.
Right.
You know, we talked a little bit about them, Coach Mosier, and how well they've done the last several years, and they probably look to be pretty fair again this year.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about the Meade Buffaloes. They always seem to reload. That is a team, because they run that single wing, the challenge for them is that you have a skill position most people don't think about with their team. And that's the center. The guy that snaps the ball, because he has to either snap directly to the quarterback, or sometimes they'll even snap it to the wing or snap it to the running back. You really don't know where it's going. And if you don't have a center that has great control, you can end up in a mess. And that's the area where they really seem to load up. They also seem to load up on that up back, that blocking back that they put just behind the line. And so they've had some great players there over the years. And I don't know who that's going to be this year so far, but if it's who I think it is, they just reloaded the position again.
Yeah, we'll have to get over there. We'll have to feature one of those games just so we can go over to Meade and figure out who's doing what.
Yep.
If nothing else, right?
Right.
All right. So, and around the area, all right, so who else is included in the 2-1A?
We got Elkhart.
That's true, the Wildcats.
Okay. I think Cimarron, Blue Jays.
Yes.
So you've got, and those could be some decent teams this year.
They could maybe throw a monkey wrench into stuff.
Well, they might. They might. You never know. Cimarron had the great run a couple years ago that kind of got ended by injuries. And that's kind of what you have at a lot of the smaller schools, especially before you make that break to 8-man. Because if you have 15 to 17 guys on your team, or even 19 guys on your team, and you lose that one star player, it's sometimes hard for the other guys to really pick that up because you've leaned so heavily on that one player. And we see that in 8-man as well.
I'll be interested, next week when we go talk to Coach Fox here in Sublette too, to see how they're going to be this year.
Yeah, they were down last year, obviously, and so they had some struggles. They've been down for some years, but the thing about Sublette, and I love covering every year on the radio. I've always covered the Southwestern Heights Sublette game, and we'll do that again this year. The thing I always like about that game, though, is you just never know what you're going to get. We've seen some young men come off the bench at Sublette after some injuries and play lights out. And so we've also seen some guys. I think the first year I started covering them, their quarterback moved to wide receiver, then he moved to running back. They had enough injuries in the game; they had to move it back to quarterback. And so Sublette always does a great thing. That Coach Simpson over the years and Coach Fox has really continued that. And you hear this a lot, and it sounds cliche, but it really is real. They coach young men, not just players. And you can see that when they're called upon in situations of that are not so well.
Yeah, and you think about it, a lot of these 2 and 1A teams, because you got Heights and Meade and Elkhart and Sublette. I mean, they all play each other, too.
Right.
So
And they all
that's
know
another-
each other.
Yeah.
That's one thing that social media has added dimension. Social media has added to some of these smaller teams is not only do they see each other at the powerlifting meets and at the baseball games and at the basketball games and all of that, but they also are chatting each other up,
Yeah,
Snapchatting each other, and
They're all on here, too.
yeah, and so that adds, I think, sometimes some emotional incentive. Is that a kind way to put it?
It's a new way to trash talk.
It is, and so
And you get the same thing, too, because we have a lot of 8-man teams out in this area also.
we do.
And so, and they all play each other as well, because you got 8-man 1 and 8-man 2, and they're split up between those two.
Right.
But still, Moscow and Satanta and everybody,
Rolla.
and Rolla, they all play each other too.
Mineola.
So it's going to be a fun season, I think.
It is, and it's going to be
So-
fun to track as we go through.
Yeah. All right. So, Jack, thanks. We'll see you next week because we got the new show coming up on Friday. It's all him. I might help him a little bit, but it's going to be mostly him. Thanks, Jack.
You bet.
All right. Ed, thanks for tuning in today, this special edition of High Plains Today.
Keep up to date with the latest information from TV23 on our Facebook page, KDGL TV.